Okay, let's dive right in. We're looking at something massive today, a claim that honestly sounds almost unbelievable until you see the details. Leaked intelligence reports are suggesting that African infrastructure, this thing called the Afronet cloud, now handles something like 40% of all global internet traffic.
40%. It's a staggering figure. And it's not just, African traffic. We're talking about a huge chunk of the world's digital activity.
Right, nearly half. So this isn't just a tech story anymore, is it? This deep dive is about what the sources are calling a fundamental digital power shift.
Exactly. It changes the whole game. We need to understand how Africa seemingly went from being, well, primarily a consumer of tech to potentially a major global provider, almost overnight, it feels like.
Although the documents show it wasn't overnight at all, was it? This was apparently a decade-long strategic plan.
Very deliberate. Patient investment in the actual physical infrastructure, not the flashy apps, but the pipes, the cables, the servers.
Things that actually move the data
Mm.
and that control of the pipes. Why is that causing, as the reports say, full-blown panic mode in places like Brussels and Washington? What does that control really mean?
Well, that's what we need to unpack. It wasn't one single move, but a series of really quite clever strategic steps.
Okay, let's break down how they built this dominance. The sources lay out 4 key pillars implemented sequentially,
Yes, and the first one, looking back about 10 years or so, was all about the data itself, securing it. And that came through data localization laws.
which sounds a bit dry, maybe, but the impact is huge.
Oh, absolute revolutionary. Country by country, African nations started passing laws saying, basically, if data is about our citizens, our businesses, our government,
Yeah.
it has to be stored on servers inside Africa.
So no more automatically sending everything off to data centers in Europe or the U.S.
Precisely. It forced the issue. If you want to operate here, you need to store the data here. And that directly led to the second pillar,
Yeah.
the need for places to store it.
The infrastructure buildup. They created the demand, then they built the supply.
Exactly. And we saw this explosion of construction, massive state-of-the-art data centers, not small server rooms. We're talking tier fee facilities in Lagos, Nairobi, Johannesburg, Cairo, Accra, real global competitors.
Okay, so they've got the data localized, they've built the capacity to hold it, but how do you go from holding your own data to controlling global flows? That needs connections.
Right. Pillar 3, global connectivity. And this is where it gets really interesting. They started laying thousands of kilometers of new undersea cables,
But strategically laid, right? Not just adding more capacity on old routes.
very strategically. The focus was on creating new routes, bypassing the traditional Western choke points, direct connections to South America, the Middle East, Asia.
And the funding. The sources mentioned some key partners there.
Yes, significant backing from Chinese, Russian, and Emirati investors, using non-Western capital to build these alternative digital highways, essentially.
So localize the data, build the storage, create your own global connections. It really does sound like geopolitical chess.
It is, and it all leads to the fourth pillar, the capstone, the Afronet backbone. This is the sovereign internet backbone designed to route intra-African traffic, yes, but increasingly also that intercontinental traffic through these African-controlled networks.
Marketed for speed and security, the documents say, but really designed for control.
Ultimately, yes, making the continent an indispensable hub for data transit.
Which brings us right to the core of it, how this infrastructure actually captures that 40%. Because like you said, most people, probably you listening right now, think of the internet as websites, apps.
Yeah, Google, Facebook, TikTok. But the real power, the foundational control, isn't in the apps. It's in the physical stuff. The cables deep under the ocean, the massive server farms, the routing agreements.
So even if a company is based in Silicon Valley, their data might now be flowing through, say, Lagos or Nairobi.
Increasingly, yes, especially if it's going between, say, South America and Asia, because of routing agreements, cloud partnerships, and this crucial technical piece the documents highlight, the Afri-Route protocol.
Okay, Afri-Route protocol. This sounds technical, but it seems absolutely critical to understanding the mechanism here.
It's the secret sauce, if you will, developed not in isolation, but as part of a Joint BRICS cyber initiative. Think of it like an intelligent traffic management system for the internet, but with a built-in preference
A preference for.
for African network nodes. Because much of this infrastructure is newer, higher capacity, and uses those direct, non-traditional routes we talked about, the protocol can often find lower latency, faster paths by routing traffic through Afronet data centers.
So it automatically prioritizes these African hubs for traffic between the global south Asia, and even parts of Europe.
That's the core idea. It leverages the physical advantages of the new infrastructure. So data going from, say, Sao Paulo to Shanghai or Mumbai to Istanbul,
Instead of going the old way, maybe through London or Frankfurt.
it might find a quicker path through Accra or Johannesburg because of the AFRI protocol and the physical cable layout. It positions Africa as the most efficient intermediary for huge swaths of global traffic.
And we're not just talking about people browsing websites or sending emails.
No. The reports emphasize this is the heavy stuff. Massive AI training computations requiring huge bandwidth, cross-border fintech transactions, high-def video streaming. Even elements of global banking networks are now, perhaps unknowingly, dependent on these African routing points.
Wow. And then there's this sort of organic growth factor that mentioned the diaspora connection.
Yes, the feedback loop. You have hundreds of millions in the global African diaspora. They're increasingly using Africa-based platforms, things like AfroTalk for social media or Ubuntuet for business cloud services.
Which are built on Afronet infrastructure.
Exactly. So their usage naturally drives more international traffic onto these networks. Plus, companies needing efficient connections across the global south might shift their hosting to Afronet simply because it's faster and potentially cheaper for those routes.
So it becomes the default, not just an alternative.
In certain key corridors and sectors, yes, it's a confluence of deliberate strategy and organic adoption.
Okay, so if nearly half the world's critical data is flowing through networks governed from Africa, the reaction you mentioned in the West, the digital security emergency, it starts to make sense.
It's severe and apparently escalating. The panic isn't just technical, it's about jurisdiction. Who sets the rules for this data? Suddenly, vast amounts of global traffic fall under African regulatory frameworks, like the emerging AfroGrid compliance standards.
Right, AfroGrid. Let's clarify that. Is that like Europe's GDPR, focused on privacy, or something else?
Good question. It has privacy elements, yes, but the core aim seems broader. Digital sovereignty. It's a pan-African framework aiming to standardize rules for data ownership, storage, ethical use, security protocols that works for any data flowing through Afronet, regardless of where it started or where it's going.
So applying African rules to global data flows.
That's the goal. And that's what's triggering alarms. You see these leaked memos, one reportedly from a U.S. State Department task force warning about, quote, long-term strategic risks to Western economic and intelligence capabilities.
And the European Commission apparently called it an unacceptable concentration of control.
So the reaction is to try and build their own alternative, this digital NATO idea.
That's the push, yes. A coordinated Western infrastructure alliance. But the analysts cited in the reports are, frankly, quite skeptical. They're calling it costly, slow, and ultimately futile.
Futile? Why futile? Can't the West just build more cables, redirect the traffic?
It seems it's not that simple. It's about the deep integration that's already happened over the last decade. The routing protocols, the peering agreements between networks, the physical locations.
Right, you can't just unplug it easily. You'd have to fundamentally re-architect huge parts of the internet's logic, convince everyone to switch back to potentially slower or older routes.
And essentially ignore the speed advantages the AFRI protocol offers on those key south-south routes.
Exactly. The system is already deeply interwoven. Dislodging Afronet now would be incredibly difficult and expensive, maybe impossible.
Which means Africa now holds, well, unprecedented leverage. It's flipped the script from seeking aid to setting terms.
Completely. AU regulators could potentially demand compliance with specific African data security standards or privacy rules from any company whose traffic uses Afronet.
And there was mention of AfroRuled settlement requirements. What does that involve?
Yeah. That seems to be about linking the infrastructure to financial control. The idea appears to be that certain types of cross-border digital payments or fintech transactions using Afronet might be required to settle according to specific AU financial protocols.
So using African digital currency frameworks or reserve rules for transactions that just pass through their systems.
Potentially, it's a way to exert financial influence tied directly to controlling the data flow. Infrastructure becomes monetary leverage.
Which explains why, according to the sources, Silicon Valley giants are now quietly lobbying AU officials.
They have to. They're seeking guaranteed access, maybe preferential treatment. They're even offering to build more infrastructure for Africa in exchange for favorable routing.
It's a total reversal. Suddenly, Silicon Valley needs Africa's pipes more than Africa needs their apps.
The gatekeepers have changed address. They're not just in California anymore.
Okay, let's pivot this to maybe the biggest area of all. AI. Artificial intelligence. Training these massive models takes incredible amounts of data, huge bandwidth.
Much of which, as we've established, is now flowing through Afronet, or potentially using the vast data sets being stored locally under those data localization laws.
This gives Africa enormous potential influence over the future of AI development globally, doesn't it?
That seems to be the next frontier. The sources suggest future Afrogrid legislation could be quite assertive here.
How so? What could they demand?
Well, the reports hint that Afrogrid might require any AI models trained on data that is passed through Afronet or uses those African-hosted datasets to comply with specific African ethical standards.
Ethical standards, like rules about bias or transparency.
Exactly. Things like algorithmic accountability, fairness, ensuring models align with African values or governance policies. This would force foreign AI companies, huge global players, to potentially adapt their core algorithms and models to meet AU requirements if they want to use the infrastructure or the data.
Forcing Google or Microsoft or others to change their AI to meet African standards. That would be a profound shift in global power.
Unprecedented, really, and the trajectory suggests this isn't peaking, that 40% figure. The analysts see it as a baseline.
They're predicting it could go higher.
Significantly higher. With new cable projects already underway, talk of a second route-out protocol upgrade, and Afrogrid expanding its reach potentially across 50 countries. Predictions are Afronet could handle as much as 60% of global traffic by 2030.
60%? Wow. The implication is stark. Control of oil-built empires in the last century.
And control of data flows is building the empires of this century. Africa isn't just participating, it's emerging as a central player, a digital superpower shaping the rules.
So to wrap this up, the core shift we've seen in these documents is Africa moving from digital colony to digital backbone.
Deliberately, strategically. They've built the infrastructure, integrated it globally, and now they're positioned to write the rules for a huge portion of the global internet.
And the panic in the West isn't just about lost market share. It's about losing control, losing jurisdictional power.
Because infrastructure, once it's this deeply embedded, this integrated into global commerce, it's almost impossible to just rip out and replace. It creates a new reality.
The challenge then, for global businesses, for governments, for everyone really, is adaptation.
Starkly, yes. Adapt to this new digital world order, engage with the AU, understand Afrogrid, or risk getting locked out of the vital data highways powering the future.
So a final thought for you listening. As you go about your digital day, maybe think about the hidden pathways your data takes. The power isn't just where the websites are hosted. It's increasingly held by those who control the roads beneath the oceans and across continents. A new digital empire has emerged, right where